Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bootstrap Solo. I am Pratik Shah, and today we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly about running your own law practice. This podcast is for those that want to know what it's really like to start, run, and grow a practice. Today's guest is my very good friend Alex Comley. He's one of the partners over at Comley, Deacon, and Fresh. He runs a practice focused primarily on personal injury. He started the practice right out of school in 2012 and has been growing strong ever since. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Pratik. It's good to be here.
Man, it's always so good to chat with you. I remember in the early days when you started your podcast, when you started your practice, you started it right out of school, right?
Yep. I started it at a table inside of an apartment.
Yeah. So tell me about that. This was just the apartment that you were living in law school, or what?
Yeah. So when law school finished, it was '08. 2012. Sorry.
12. Yeah.
2012. You graduated in 2012 also. It wasn't good. It wasn't like it was now where there's a lot of jobs. There were no jobs.
Right.
I was working for the public defender's office as like a clerk, and they said, congrats on passing the bar, but now that you're a lawyer, you can't work here anymore.
Yeah, congrats, and you're homeless.
There's literally a hiring freeze going on.
Yeah.
It was totally different. So
what did you do? How did you come to the conclusion? I mean, you didn't just jump from, okay, well, public defender's not hiring, I'm going to go start my practice, right? There must have been like some other discussion there. Or is that how it went? I don't know. You tell me.
No, I mean, I applied to some jobs through like on-campus interviews, and there was zero interest in me. So I figured I had to pay the bills somehow. So
yeah.
I say that being a lawyer is kind of like being a plumber. You
Yeah.
just go out there and try and get some work.
Yeah.
That's what I
So,
did.
okay. So you applied to all these jobs. You're not getting callbacks. You're not getting hiring. You're not getting hired. You finally make the decision. You know what? I'm just going to start my own. Screw
Yeah.
it. So what do you do? What do you do day one?
Well, we've talked about this a lot, and I think maybe you did it too. But I posted ads on Craigslist. I had no money. I had nothing but a credit card that had a little bit of debt on it. So buying advertising wasn't an option. And so it's funny when you post ads on Craigslist, you can only post one ad per email address. So I went
Right.
on to Google and I got 15 email addresses, and every morning I'd post my ads. What do you got? DUIs, evictions,
Right.
civil litigation, and I'd post 10 ads. I'd click through all the emails, and then I'd do it in the afternoon again, and I would do that as much as I could. And
Yeah.
yeah, the phone would ring.
And the phone would ring, and who you'd pick up, or you have somebody else pick up? What'd you do?
Yeah, no, it was all I had was a cell phone.
Yeah.
I had a printer, a cell phone, I had a Prius, and that was it.
Those were your life's possessions at
Yeah,
that moment in time.
and a
So
couple
you get the
kids.
phone
Yeah,
rings, the first phone call comes in from one of your ads, and you're thinking, "Oh, thank God, here we go."
yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember some of the calls were crazy. They'd come at like 3 in the morning, and I would jump up, so excited. My phone's ringing.
Right,
I'm
right.
excited to take this call, and it would just be the wildest stuff. Some drunk guy saying his girlfriend stole his dog or something. How can he sue her? And he's calling me at 3 o'clock in the morning. But Gabby, my wife, who
Yeah,
will tell
yeah,
you that I would happily take that call and talk to
yeah.
that person and see how I could help them.
Right. You're just racking your brain.
Yeah,
You're issue spotting, right? You're like,
yeah.
what can I do here? And is there any way to make it profitable for me and my law firm? And
Yeah.
go
I
ahead,
was
go
gonna,
ahead.
yeah. So the first case I actually got was it was an eviction defense case, and I remember I got paid I think $500. It might have been less. It might have been $300. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was like, all right, and I poured my heart into that case. It was in Lancaster, which I think is an hour and a half
Right.
from Santa Monica where I was living, and I drove out there. I don't at least 3 times, filed motions for $500 or $300. I mean, just driving out there 3 times is 9 hours, not including the court time, not including the research time, not
Right.
including, yeah, so
And
that was
just
my
thinking
first one.
about that today of like doing that for 500 bucks today, like make you want to throw up.
Yeah, I mean,
There's no way.
I would do that for free now if it was, I felt like somebody needed help, but I
That's
don't charge
different,
by the
right?
hour anymore, ever.
Right,
I don't,
right. So yeah, so now you do personal injury. Obviously, your first case was eviction. You were advertising for everything. Did you
yeah,
just get a hodgepodge of calls, or what happened?
yep. Um, just a lot of eviction defense stuff at the beginning. I
Yeah,
couldn't, I talked to you about this. I couldn't do personal injury because for personal injury, you need to invest your time and your money up front, and
yeah,
maybe you get paid later. But when you have
right.
bills, I had an apartment, I had a
And no
Prius,
money.
and no money,
Yeah,
you can't do that type of work. You need the upfront stuff. So evictions and then criminal defense, because I had
yeah.
worked for the public defender. So I was try in a perfect world, I would have taken a lot of criminal defense cases. But when you're advertising on Craigslist, you're kind of taking whatever you can get.
So how did you learn how to even do eviction cases? I mean,
Sure.
obviously you didn't do it. You worked at the public defender cases at
Yep.
the public defenders. What did you do?
Well, the LA Law Library, and I became a member there. I think I spent like three. At first, you can go for free, but you can pay a little bit of money and you get a little bit of additional privileges. So the LA County Law Library downtown, across the street from Stanley Mosque, it was a godsend because the Rudder guides, the CEB books, anything you want to do. When it's eviction stuff, it's mostly CEB, like
Mhm.
California Continuing Education of the Bar, and they have. Give me 1 second. Morning. I'm alone at the office. I didn't think somebody else was going to come today, but there you
That's
go.
fine.
CEB books, and they have something called like the Eviction Defense Manual. They have eviction or anyways, they have they call them like secondary sources or practice manuals on pretty much every subject.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn something, the Rudder guides and the CEV books are amazing.
And so I want to focus on that first year, okay? So
Yeah.
you or that first probably 6 months, you make the decision. I'm gonna start my practice. You start posting up ads on Craigslist. You got your phone and your Prius, and you're driving all over. I mean, if you even remember, how
Yeah.
long did it take you to even get that first $500 Lancaster case?
Gosh, I don't think it took that long, if I had to
Okay,
remember.
okay,
If you're ready to pound the pavement and post ads on Craigslist and take anything, door law, that's the old
right,
joke. Like when you
right.
practice door law, anything that comes in the door, you can get cases. They're going to be crazy cases. You're probably going to end up losing money,
Right.
for how much you're going to work, for how much you're going to get paid. But the cases are there. There's a
Yeah.
need
So
for, yeah,
though there is absolutely a need. I think I read a statistic that said that 80% of people that have legal needs are not being met. So there's definitely a bunch of people out there that have legal work. Now I don't know if those are legitimate legal issues or if they have money to pay for a lawyer, but there are legal needs out there. So kind of focusing on this, you get this $500 Lancaster case,
yeah,
you're working on it, you're reading the CEB, you're doing all the things you need to do to
yeah.
get up to speed to properly represent your client, but at the same time you're still advertising for more stuff, right? You can't survive on a $500
Oh, yeah.
flat fee.
Yep. And so I remember parking ticket, no, what is it, like speeding ticket defense stuff.
Yeah.
You could, I think people would pay like $100 for that. Oh, appearances.
Appearances.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
There were a couple companies that would hire you to go to court between 35, like the lowest was $35. Most of them were $40, and some of them were 50, and that was kind of the high end. So yeah, you could go to court, and there was no Zoom back then. You had to get in your car, and this is funny. So if
You
I
sound like
had
an old man, Alex.
if they were going to pay me $40 to do an appearance at Stanley Mosque, I'd put my suit on, I'd drive my Prius to downtown, how much does it cost to park at Stanley
Yeah,
Mosque?
10 to 20 bucks to
Right.
park.
But if you go to Chinatown, they had a lot for like $8.
Oh,
So I would
okay.
walk
The
from
hack,
Chinatown,
the life hack.
yeah, because you can't pay $20 to park if you're only getting paid 40.
Right, for the appearance, right?
Yeah. So
And so
appearances,
you'd
yeah,
walk from Chinatown over to Stanley Moss to do the appearance to get your 40 bucks, minus your gas, minus your $8 parking. You're looking at a net of like 10 to $20.
yep,
I used to do it too, so no shame in the game. You and
yep,
I know. We did it together. We'd be like, this guy wants to pay me 60 bucks for an appearance. I'm in.
yep,
You know? So you're doing appearance work, making 40 bucks a pop. You got this monster $500 Lancaster case.
yep.
You've got these, little traffic tickets here and there. How are you making your rent? You're in Santa Monica. How is
Right.
this? How is this even working?
Well, I was doing everything I could. So the traffic tickets, if, every once in a while I did pick up a criminal defense case. Maybe I
Hmm.
charged, $1,500, $2,000 if I was lucky for a DUI. Um, some domestic violence cases, all misdemeanor stuff, because
Right.
when you're a first year lawyer, I didn't think I could, and I probably shouldn't have been doing felony work.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it was. I didn't have any kids. I didn't have a mortgage. I still don't have a
Right.
mortgage, but you can do it when you don't have a ton of overhead. I didn't have any overhead. Um, so you can do it if you're willing to pick up enough cases. So I don't think I was saving any money. But
Right.
the important thing at the beginning was I was learning a lot. I was in court a lot, and I told you this. When you finish a hearing, or when you're downtown, I would just walk up and down the courthouse halls and look for trials to watch. I would stay late after my appearance and just watch other people appear, and you kind of learn.
Yeah.
Um, and then after you do enough work for other people, then you might get your first referral.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah,
So, so I remember when you and I used to talk in the early days a lot, and we not only would we get excited about this appearance work because we were about to make our $18.50 on this appearance, but you and I would talk and say, "Look, not only am I getting paid for this appearance, I'm going to go and I'm going to sit and see how to handle a CMC, how to handle an arraignment, how to handle et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, so that next week when I have my arraignment coming up or I have the CMC coming up for one of my clients, I know what I'm doing. Like this isn't this. So not only am I getting paid, and then I would even use that as a networking opportunity to go there and start talking to other lawyers. I imagine you did the same thing.
absolutely. And I would
You have no
love
choice.
to watch and see how other lawyers did things. It was fascinating. It's still fascinating to me. Like if you want to do this line of work, you kind of have to love it. It's gonna
Yeah.
not be fun if you don't enjoy it. So I was
Right.
fascinated by like other lawyers and how they composed themselves, how they did things. And then I forgot. About 12 months in, I had a mentor who was invaluable, and he was giving me some work too.
How did you find the mentor?
He was doing a criminal case while I was a public defender, and when I got my license, I sent him an email, and 6 months later, because he was old school, his secretary printed his emails and he read them and he would write the response. So 6 months later, I get a call from him. His name is Ira Salzman, and he said, "Alex, I got you your first case. Meet this guy here, ask for this amount of retainer, and then give me a call." And that was the phone call. Click, hang
Done.
up.
You're
Yeah,
like done on my
yeah.
way. Yeah.
And so that was like my first. I got a decent retainer. It was a pretty serious case. It was a civil case, and I learned a ton on that case. So yeah, meeting this mentor, kind of sending out cold emails to different firms. That's how I met him. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So all right. So you said you met your mentor about 12 months in, right?
Yeah, probably.
So that first 12 months, what was that first 12 months? Was it just a combination of eviction defense, criminal defense, this and that, and just surviving for a year? Or were there moments within that year where you were like, okay, I think I got something here?
I don't remember like, okay, I think I got something. I mean, at some point I was like, yeah, I think I got something. And I
When
remember
did that
telling
moment come?
I remember telling you if I could make $30,000 a year, then I could pay my bills.
I do remember that conversation.
And so I don't know, probably at some point I made like 2,500 bucks a month, and I was like,
Yeah.
all right, I can go, I can keep going. Um,
Right.
and so maybe
And
that was
and
the
I don't
first
even
year
know if that
through.
was in the first year.
Yeah, I don't know. But then at some point I start, earning a little bit more, and then I was like, okay, well, this is better than I expected. And if you keep going, it's
Yeah.
surprising.
I,
There's
I, I Go ahead, please.
there was another business owner that I know, my wife's friend, and he's not a lawyer, but he said, look, if you can keep this going for 5 years, you're going to be surprised. It'll be kind of self-sustaining, and you might even be successful. And I think at the 5 year mark, that's kind of when things solidified.
Yeah, I think that's similar for me. And I think a very important point you just made is that just keep going. This stuff compounds, right? Like just stay alive, stay in the game. As long as you're in the game, you can keep playing. And the goal is just keep playing for as long as you can until you at some point run out of money. If you run out of money, you lose.
Yeah. Ch-
That's pretty much
Low overhead. Low
low
overhead.
low overhead.
So
Yeah. I
important.
mean, from your office, nowadays there's no stigma, right? But
Yeah.
but but going back to that really first year, because I think what's important, what I see a lot of and what's been bothering me on social media is a lot of people saying, go start your own, you're going to make so much money, you're going to be so rich. And I think what you just said is a very valuable point, is that it took you about 5 years to finally be like, oh yeah, this is something I can do, and I can make money doing it, and I can make good money doing it, not just
Yeah.
scraping by, not 30,000 a year. You know what I mean? So there must have been some moments in that first year or that second year where you're just like, can I keep going? Is this sustainable? What were those moments like? I want to talk about those low moments.
Absolutely. Um, I had like a full-on breakdown at some point. I forget how deep I was in. I don't know if it was
Yeah,
2 years, 1 year, 3 years. I don't remember.
yeah,
But I was down. Um, I felt like one of the cases I was working on, you know, looking back, I was doing everything I could.
right,
But at the beginning, when you're learning, you kind of think like you're failing your client if you're not winning, right?
right, right,
Um, but even if you're gonna lose a case, as long as you're doing everything you can, that's your job. But I didn't
yeah,
understand that early on. So I
right,
was, that was a rough patch. I called my mom. I was like, Mom, I gotta come over.
yeah.
And just I
No,
was
and having that support system is everything. For
yeah
me, it was my wife was just being able to come home and be like, I don't know if this is gonna work, but I'm gonna keep going. And so you call your mom, you say, Mom, this is I'm struggling.
yeah, and she like a good mom. You
Yeah,
got this, Alex. You can get through this.
yeah,
And I eventually did. But yeah, there was a case that I think I lost 12 months worth of sleep on at the beginning.
yeah,
Um, there's that happens less. I lose less sleep now. But
yeah.
you always you probably are making mistakes early on, but you always kind of think you're making mistakes. You don't know if you're making a mistake or not. 'Cause
And
what do
I
you
think
know?
that's the scary part,
Yeah,
right? Is you don't even know. It's one thing if you know that this is the right thing, this is the wrong thing. That's different. But the
yeah,
scary part is you don't even know if it's the wrong thing. So,
right.
what did you do in the beginning to find out if it was the wrong thing? Other than okay, so you go to the law library, read. You talk to your mentor. You and I would chat on the phone, but
Yep.
not like I knew anything. That was the blind leading the blind there. And so, what else did you do?
That's it. a lot of time in the law library. If you really dig into those Rudder guides and CEB books, they cover everything. I mean,
They
these are,
do.
yeah. But you got to
They're
dig
gold
into
mines.
you got to dig into them, and then ask other people, other lawyers. Um,
And in the beginning, when you're learning the basic stuff, right? The stuff they don't teach you in law school, how to file in the court, how to where the courthouse is, and what the
yeah.
court clerks are supposed to do. I mean, how did you learn all that?
Uh, so filing is just trial and error. I think it still is. I'm almost 10 years in, and there's some trial and error on filing.
Yeah,
Don't file it at the last minute, because if it gets rejected, at least you have another
right.
day to fix it. It was totally different. There was that filing room at Stanley Mosque that
Yeah,
doesn't exist anymore. And you could kind of, you know, walk in with your papers and talk to the filing clerk, and maybe they'd give you some guidance, even though they say they shouldn't.
yeah. You got to sweet talk them a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So it was more hands-on, and now everything's e-filing. I mean, LA's e-filing. I have my first federal case, so I'm literally relearning how to file things right now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, at the beginning, it was trial and error. I'm going to keep talking because I got so much to talk about.
Please, please. That's what you're here for. I want
So
to
if
hear
I
it.
had like a UD in Pasadena,
Yeah.
what would I do right now on a case if it wasn't e-filing? I would hire somebody to go file the documents for me, and they might charge
Right.
me $50 or whatever. I would drive the papers to Pasadena from Santa Monica because I didn't have $50. And if I started spending $50 every time I filed a document in a case, I would lose money on the case.
Yeah. Yeah, because we didn't have clients paying us $1,000, 2,000. Well, we had 1,000, and that was it for everything.
Maybe.
Maybe.
So you had a question, how did I pay the bills at the beginning? I picked up two kind of regular-ish clients doing evictions for landlords. Um, I got lucky. One was I met through Craigslist, and then I did good work for him, and then he hired me to do some like regular-ish evictions. And then my uncle gave me evictions on the landlord side. So you got to, lucky breaks / nepotism / whatever.
Hey, but the lucky breaks came because you're willing to put in the work, right?
Yeah.
Nobody helps out people that aren't willing to help themselves. And
Yeah.
when you can go to people and say, "Hey, I'm trying. I'm doing everything. Here's everything I've done. I know the law. I've studied it. I'm willing to go to any courthouse, any city, any county, anytime. I'll pick up your phone at 3 a.m. I'll do all those things." Okay, somebody's gonna say, "I'll give you a shot."
Yep.
Your uncle doesn't call you and say, "Here's a $10,000 case day one because you're my nephew." He doesn't want his eviction
Yeah.
screwed up either because
Totally.
he's losing
And
rent every month.
yeah. And I was working hard on his cases, and I was charging him, whatever I would charge anybody else. I think I was making like $240 per case. I don't even know if that included the filing. No, it must. Anyways, it wasn't like a ton of money, but it was regular work. I was learning. It was paying the
Right.
bills, and he was a great guy for even sending me the work.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, for giving you a shot, a first
Yeah.
year lawyer, props to him and good for
Yeah.
you for doing good work on it. I remember you and I talking in the early years, and you had kind of turned the corner a little bit. You were doing regular UDs. UDs were like your thing the first couple of years. I
Yeah.
remember talking to you about unlawful detainers, and you being like, "Man, I got a kind of nice system. I go to court 3 times a week. I got these unlawful detainers. I'm finally, got some regular business going." And I don't remember if that must have been year 3 for you, year 2 for me,
Probably.
because I was at the DA's office for a little bit. But you remember that moment? And I was starting to do PI, and we started talking about what other areas of law are out there that can make sense.
I honestly, do I have like an independent recollection of saying, I feel good about my UD business? Probably.
I remember you were like, "I'm making a couple $1,000s a month. It's pretty regular."
Yeah.
I
I mean,
I remember that.
I have notes. Like if I go back in my notes, I'm like, okay, here's my mix for the year. I'm going to try and make like $10,000 from UDs.
Yeah.
Divorce stuff, I forgot. I'm going to try and
Yeah.
make like
Family law.
$15,000 on divorce cases and
Yeah.
$20,000 on criminal defense cases. And, I would have this like mix of cases. And I was like, okay, if I can kind of hit these numbers and these segments, that, those were my goals back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, divorce stuff, forgot about that.
You did family law stuff. Was that also just from Craigslist? It seems like Craigslist was your best source of cases.
Oh gosh, I think I did divorces from Craigslist. Yeah, I mean, eventually I
I can't even imagine what those divorces were
oh,
like.
terrible. I mean, um, eventually I started paying for leads
Okay, so tell me about
from
that. When do you know when
yeah.
this was? Year 3, year 4? What are we talking?
I was working out of my apartment again. So I started in my apartment.
Yeah.
Then I got a subterranean office with no windows. And then I went back to my apartment. So I was in the apartment, I don't know, year 3 or 4.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what the reason I keep asking, kind of getting the
Yeah.
timeline is for people that are listening. I want them to know that this is not a year 1, year
No,
2 thing
no.
where by year 2 you're making 200
Yeah.
grand a year. That's not what. So I'm just trying to get this timeline
Yeah.
of giving a realistic experience of what happened, because I mean I was there with you. We were
Yep.
in the trenches together. And
Absolutely.
so year 1, year 2, year 3, you had mentioned by year 5 was finally starting to turn the
Yeah.
corner. So it must have been before then, in that range, but it was pre year 5. So
Yeah.
in there somewhere, you're back in your office. You're starting to get some family. You're starting to pay for leads. So tell me about paying for leads. How did that go?
It worked. I forget how much leads were, but I think the service would send the lead to 4 lawyers.
Ah,
So, I mean, it was no fun, because then you're talking to clients and trying to sell them on like why you're better than these 3 other lawyers, and then they all have their own prices and everyone's trying to do it for as cheap as possible. It was no fun. It was terrible.
it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
So these first 5 years that are just brutal,
Yeah.
and how much of a wake up call was that from what all of us thought we were going to be doing as lawyers when we were in law school?
Oh yeah. When I went to law school, I thought I would be doing, I'd be a real estate lawyer. What does that even mean?
I don't know.
Yeah. That's what I told people I was going to be. Um,
Yeah.
which would probably mean
UDs.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Which would probably mean transactional work, and I would be terrible at transactional work. I cannot do it at all.
Right.
So yeah, what did I think I was going to do in law school? I thought some big firm was going to hire me and pay me a lot of money, and it would be fancy. No, man.
Yeah, not even
I
close.
was parking in Chinatown,
To
walking.
save $2,
hot.
$12 on parking.
Yeah.
I
Well,
was there. I know the pain. And so at some point you decide, okay, I'm going all in on personal injury. Even though
yep.
UDs are making me money, even though, divorces are making me money, you've got this little mix of I've got 10 grand coming from this, 15 grand coming from this, and then at some point either you get a personal injury case
Yeah.
or how did you end up in personal injury?
Where did I get my first case from? I don't remember where I got my first personal injury case from. It might have been from, I kind of remember like the first big-ish one. I had this client, I did some, an eviction defense for his sister. And so he had like a car accident, and I did that for him and his mom. And I think I made $11.
11 G's. I mean,
Yeah.
considering doing UDs for $500, picking up 11,000 is 6 months worth of income.
It was, yeah, that was going to pay my bills for a long time.
Yeah. So then you're looking at this, you're like, I guess I'm doing personal injury now, huh?
Yeah. And then I remember talking to you when I would have like a roster of open cases. I would say, okay, I can safely assume that each one of these cases is going to average me $2,000 in fees.
Yeah.
And so that's how I used to value cases. Each personal injury case was about $2,000, and a lot of them were.
Right, right.
rear end, chiropractic, and they'd settle for $6,000.
Yeah, exactly.
And at the time, making $2,000 sitting in my office, um, versus going to court 6 times on a DUI. I mean,
There's a math that gets done there of
yeah,
like, hey, what makes more sense?
yeah.
And, and so what happens? So you get your first personal injury case, you get your check for 11,000. Do you just immediately say, I'm done with anything else and I'm going all in on this personal injury thing? Or did you kind of like,
Yeah.
hey, maybe this is an anomaly? Do I got to just kind of hedge my bets a little bit? What do you do?
So no, it was not. I'm going to go all in on personal injury because it was like 1 or 2 cases. I didn't have
Right.
like a ton of cases. So I could go back in my notes, and it was so the mix went from criminal defense, UD, and family law to maybe I got rid of family law, and I was like, okay,
Right.
now personal injury, UD, and criminal defense.
Got it. Right. Right. And then as that time goes on, then it becomes okay, personal injury and just UD or something like
Yeah,
that, and then eventually just personal injury. And at what point did your firm actually become pure personal injury at ballpark?
yeah. It's a good question. Maybe like 2017. I don't
So
even know.
about 5 years in.
Yeah, probably 5 years in.
So
Maybe when
about
I
five
when I
years
picked
in.
up my when I joined forces with my partner Brett Deacon, I
Yeah.
think that is when it became pretty much personal injury only. If I had some old civil cases, I was closing them up. I wasn't taking new civil cases. So at some point before I became just personal injury, I was doing some civil work, whether
Right.
business litigation stuff. There was like a trade secrets case. There was some higher level eviction stuff, like commercial, higher
Yeah.
dollar. Um, yeah,
So, I mean, this is obviously a little trip down memory lane for both of us, right? When at what point, not at what point, but in those first 3 4 years before you decided, okay, I'm all in on personal injury, did you feel like in those first 3 to 4 years, okay, I'm making more and more money every year. I've got a little system going on how, the cases are coming in. I've got referrals from my old clients, and there's, I guess for lack of a better word, there's some traction there, right?
yeah, yeah. That's fair to say.
And at some point you stop advertising on Craigslist. When was
Oh
that?
yeah. Oh, I probably stopped advertising on Craigslist like after year 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's about a year of doing that. And I think that's an important point is a year or 2 years of logging in every day. And it kind of tapers off because at first you're logging in every day and you're doing it because you have no other choice.
Yeah.
Then it tapers off to like 3 days a week and then a day a week. And then eventually you're like, I don't even want these calls anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it was 3 or 4 years before I would spend more than like $5 on lunch if I was outside of the
Yeah.
house. I mean,
Right.
I was not. Yeah.
And, so you graduated from Pepperdine,
Yep.
right? You had a bunch of classmates that probably did go off to some nice fancy job that you thought that you were going to do, and probably had some classmates that were out there working.
Yep.
How did that, if it did it mess with your mind at all to see, hey, look, maybe I should just go get a job because these guys are out here making decent money and I'm over here advertising on Craigslist. Like, how did you deal with that kind of emotional side of it?
So to answer that question, I don't remember ever being like, man, I wish I had, this job, this corporate job paying me a lot of money. I don't think that crossed my mind because I'll tell you the truth, I was having so much fun
Yeah.
driving to courthouses, you know, sitting in hearings, and I, to me, it was a ton of fun. So no,
I
it
mean,
never crossed my mind because I was just having a good time. I was paying my bills,
right.
and yeah.
And were you married? You were married at the time when this was happening, or were you just dating Gabby?
So we probably got married. Uh, 2014 maybe.
So
So,
you're in the middle of your Craigslist dealings. and
I
you decide,
remember
let's
like
get married.
the night before I got married, I'm in the room, getting ready for the wedding, on my cell phone, talking to a guy about a speeding ticket he got that I'm gonna appear for him for.
Excuse me, but that's what I'm talking about. I think that's just what it takes. There's that sense of there really is no off limits, and maybe now at this point, you've got a good firm, you're handling, you've got a good roster of cases, and you've gotten some great results, and you're starting to siphon off time. Hey, but we're still always answering the phone.
Oh yeah, my phone rings, I'm answering it. 90% of the time, it's like a robocaller.
Yeah, but
It's
it never
like,
changes.
yeah, I'll answer the phone because in our line of work, um, any potential client could cover your bills for the year.
Right. Right. And
You never
and
know.
and I want to focus on that just for a second because the first 5 years when you're really kind of in the dirt and just scraping by for every little thing, right? It's just pure survival. It's an emotional roller coaster. It's ups and downs. Things are good, things are bad. Every week is just an emotional roller coaster. But
Yeah.
even post 5 years, okay, you've turned the corner, you're doing okay. There are still certain things you do now that will never change. Answering the phone, right? How often are you working, nights and weekends, for example?
So how I work is probably different than most people. I like to work 9 to 5. Okay.
Okay.
But it, that doesn't mean I'm not answering the phone or thinking about my cases. I'm thinking about my cases 24/7. I'm thinking strategy. So yeah, are you working? Yeah, I'm working. And my wife will tell you he's 24/7, his mind is not present.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about, well, what am I, when am I going to send this 998, or, how are we going to get coverage on this, or how are we going to prove liability on this? If you're doing what I do, what we do, you can't not think about that. Or maybe you can, but I can't turn my brain off. So my brain's
No.
always on. My phone's always on. If someone's going to call me, it doesn't matter when they're going to call me, I'm going to answer the phone. But when I'm like sitting down doing emails and doing written work or research, that's 9 to 5.
Yeah, and I think it's good to have that compartmentalization, right? Everybody works differently, and it's probably good for the relationship that Gabby knows she's going to get to see you at a certain time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm home at 5:30 every day.
Oh, I love that. There's a lot of people jealous. I'm jealous of that. I mean, I work from home, so I guess I'm home all day, but
Yeah.
I'm still I'm still in my office. But okay, so I want to go back to you getting married in 2014. So
Yeah,
2012, 2013, you start your practice because we got sworn in at the end of 2012.
right.
2013, you start your practice. That's year one. You're still kind of in the dirt. How is Gabby handling all this?
She was
When
great.
when you
Um,
tell her,
yeah.
honey, I'm driving to Lancaster for a $500 case 6 times, was there a point even in those first couple years where she's like, Alex, is this going to work? How is this going to work?
Never, not once. She was nothing
That's
but
amazing.
supportive. Yeah.
Ride or die.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
love that. I love
yeah.
that.
So in terms of my relationship with her and how she supported this, 100%.
And that's amazing. And because now there's validation, right? It feels good at this point to be like, hey, your belief in me
Yeah.
wasn't unwarranted. It was justified.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it like the moment you came home after you settled your big case? I know you've had a couple big cases throughout the years, but that first big case, and you get to go home and tell your wife that it all paid off.
So it's fun to tell her that I resolved the big case, but and maybe this is standard, but what happens to me on a big case is I kind of go flat, and I just start thinking about what I need to do to grow the firm or get the next case, or what I need to do on other cases.
Yeah.
It's weird, but every single time I have done like at the beginning, a big case to me was a little bit different than what it is now, but
Yeah.
it's always the same feeling, okay,
Right.
cool. What's next? I mean, I almost like don't even want to have a beer.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always want to have a beer, but when
Right.
there's some like chemical reaction in my body when I like settle a big case where I'm like, oh, I always get tired.
Yeah. All
I
that,
don't
it's
know.
like
It's
all that
weird.
work just paid off.
Yeah,
And
but
so, do you remember your first quote unquote, and I wouldn't say your big case today, but I would say your
yeah.
first time when you felt like, okay, I settled a big case, and if you're okay sharing numbers, what was that number, and what did it feel like when you settled your first big quote unquote big case?
Yeah, so from what I remember, my first pretty big case was like it was $240,000.
Yeah, I mean that's a big
Yeah,
case.
and I don't remember how early on, but it was pretty early. Well, might have been like 4 or 5 years in. I could go
Yeah,
back.
yeah. No, that's okay. Yeah, ballpark.
So yeah, I think 4 or 5 years in, we mediated it at because I remember we mediated at Judicate West in Santa Ana,
Yeah,
settled it for $240,000, and I remember just driving home and you know happy but thinking about what's next.
yeah, yeah. So you're able to make that call to well, obviously the client's there with you,
Yeah.
but you're able to, call your wife and say, I can't believe it. This just happened.
Yep.
Um,
So what do you make on
we
that? 80,000? That's a lot of money.
that's a lot. That's not, you wanted 30,000 a year. You just got almost 3 years worth of income. You know?
Crazy. Yeah, that was
Crazy time. Yeah.
yeah, that was probably like 2016.
Yeah, and when was it? I think setting some realistic expectations for a lot of younger lawyers. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it took me 7 years before I got my first seven-figure case,
My first
and I
seven
just
figure case.
yeah, I mean, I just thought for the longest time when I was running my practice, like if I get one seven-figure case, oh my God, I'm gonna retire, and I don't know what else. I don't know what else to do. That would be like the pinnacle. It took me. You think when you start doing PI, these are just out there and you're gonna get them because you see them everywhere.
I think it took me until no, I know. It was during the pandemic was my first seven figure case.
So about 8 years. Yeah, not
Yeah.
that different from me. Yeah,
Wait, how long did you say it took you?
7 for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, 8 years.
yeah. It's crazy, right? Because you do PI, you see all the billboards
Obviously
everywhere.
the what's it called? Do not disturb.
Didn't
Oh, I
work.
see. I didn't even turn it on. Got it.
That's
Sorry.
okay. That's all right. So, I
All
mean,
right.
for me, obviously, when I started doing PI and I started seeing all the billboards and I'd go to all the CALA events and I'd see everybody talking about these seven-figure cases they got, and I'm working on these Cairo only six, seven, $8,000 cases. You think you're doing something wrong because you're not getting a seven-figure case. At least I felt that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I knew that I shouldn't be getting all the seven figure cases, if any of them, because there's better lawyers than I.
Right, but you would hope to still get it in co-counsel or do something like
Right, right,
that.
right. Yeah.
You know.
It they're there. You, but I've told you this too. I mean, people go through their entire career and probably never get a seven figure case.
It's true, and I think that's when I settled a multi seven figure case a couple years back, I got a lot of calls from friends of mine. They were like, you should be super proud because there are people that go their entire careers and never get that, and that kind of puts things in perspective because it definitely makes you feel these days with everything that's out there, all the conferences, all the CLEs, all the Instagram posts, is that oh man, everybody's just killing it and everybody's doing seven
Yeah.
figures a year. And the reality is that's just not true. There are the vast majority of lawyers that do PI may only get one or two seven-figure cases a year, may not ever get one.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to think how people get tons of seven figure cases, their marketing budget is massive.
Massive. And that's just that massive overhead that
Yeah.
you don't have in the beginning.
Yeah.
So, kind of going back and focusing on you a little bit, you turn the corner, you start paying for leads year 4, year 5. some calls are coming in, you're chasing with other lawyers to try to close these deals. You eventually find a channel of marketing that works for you.
Yeah, yeah.
And what was it? And what did you do?
Um, internet ads.
Okay,
Yeah.
and how did you even do internet ads? Did you hire an agency?
No,
What
I
what
did it
did you do to?
myself. So at the beginning, actually, so Yelp, if you can get your Yelp reviews up, back in the day, it
Yeah.
was effective to just get your reviews up. But then they started doing paid marketing, and I think my first paid marketing was through Yelp.
Okay. And was that successful for you? You still doing it?
I don't do it anymore, and it was, I mean, I think it was good enough. Yeah.
Everything's ROI positive, right? As long as it's ROI
Yeah.
positive, we're okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not doing it anymore, so I don't, I think it's
Wasn't that great?
changed a lot too.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm not an expert in Yelp ads anymore, but I know that I used to do them, and I think they
Okay.
worked.
So you said you
Yeah.
do internet advertising and you did it yourself.
Yep.
Obviously, did you have a background in that? Did you go to the law? I mean, they don't have that in the law library. How did you even
Yeah.
learn that?
Well, you got to do what you got to do, and
You don't
I
have to divulge your trade
no
secrets,
no no
but
you no. So how do you learn? At the beginning, it was Google AdWords, and how do you
right.
learn that? I mean, I remember talking to you about it. They had something called like Google AdWords Express back in the day. I don't even think it
Mhm.
exists anymore.
I remember that.
And so you could, it was simple. Now it's incredibly. I don't think the Express exists anymore, and it's incredibly complicated. Um, but the reason I was able to get into AdWords in 2016, 2017 was it was way cheaper. And
Mm.
now the competition is crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, the numbers are insane to be able to compete,
Yeah.
and that's okay, right? Like whatever channel works. I think another thing that the message I would want to kind of get out there is all channels work. Whatever
Yeah.
you want to do, whether it's internet advertising, social media, whether it's just advertising on Craigslist. I mean, I did that too, right?
Yeah.
Like all channels work. Some work better than others, but whatever you do, you got to spend the time learning how to do it the right way.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it this way, who are the guys spending tons of money? And what are they doing?
Yeah.
Well, they're doing TV, they're doing radio, they're doing billboards, and they're doing internet. And they're probably doing social media too.
Yeah.
I've never done social media. I know nothing about it. Um, and I've never done billboards, radio, or TV because the upfront it's just too much. Um, so, I mean, right now the best cases are referrals from former clients because they're
Yeah.
not, they want to work with you. And a lot of times they're the best cases just generally.
Right.
Um,
Just the quality of the
yeah.
case.
And when you start spending money on marketing, you got to start spending money on overhead.
Right. Because then you need intake.
Yep. You need
Somebody's
more.
got to, analyze what's good and what's bad and what's worth sending over to Alex to talk to.
Yeah. So there's this balance like, okay, I have a little bit of money. Should I spend it on marketing? Well, if I'm going to spend, this much money on marketing, can my office handle how much
Yeah.
that's going to generate?
Right.
And I'm super cheap. I don't like
Yeah.
spending money on overhead. So that's kind of the balance we deal with. So if we can do really good work on our cases and just squeeze more money out of cases, and that's the goal. But yeah,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So kind of coming up on time here, a couple of questions. We talked a little bit about the marketing side, the business side, being a lawyer side. I mean, the first couple of years, you're trying to figure out how to be have you ever ran a business before?
um, I don't, I don't think so. No.
Okay, so no experience running a business, no experience being a lawyer, no experience in internet marketing. You jumped right in and it worked, right? You jumped right into the deep end and it took a while and there was ups and downs, but you're there now,
I think that's fair. You can say that. I
right?
came out at the other side and I'm alive. Yeah.
You came out the other side looking great, right?
Yeah.
It's Comley, Deacon, and Fresh. You got a couple lawyers at the firm. You got some staff, and so now, I mean, in kind of having to learn all those skills, right? Those were all new muscles you were building. How
Yeah.
to be a lawyer, how to be a business owner, how to be a marketer, all these
Yeah.
things. How would you find yourself splitting your time? And I know there's no mathematical formula
Yeah.
of like I'm spending this time, but kind of looking back in a ballpark, how would you say your time was split those first couple of years in figuring all those things out?
Oh man. It's probably like not very much time on actual legal work in the beginning. More like research, driving to court, talking to clients, and then yeah, how much actual legal work are you doing? 2 hours a day, maybe.
Yeah, and not because you don't want to. There's just no time
Right.
for it.
There's you don't have much work. That's why
Right.
malpractice insurance is cheap when you're a first year lawyer, because what are you going to mess up?
Right. You don't have any cases, and any case that you get isn't going to be that big of a loss, anyways.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so I think that's an important note, right? A lot of people, they work at a firm for a bunch of years. They go, hey, I know what I'm doing. I know how to do all this legal work. I'm going to go out and start my own. And that's fine. They should. I never discourage anybody from starting their own, because obviously you did it. I did it. We've all done fine. It can be great. But it's a reality check to say you're not going to be spending all day writing motions and answering discovery. Your day is going to be spent figuring out how to get clients, how to get them to cut you a check, how to figure out the logistics part of getting mail out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because everything was done by hand, paying bills. Everything was done by hand. I remember I talked to some of my friends that would refer me cases in the beginning. They're like, I still remember getting handwritten referral fee checks from your personal account. Like,
You
yeah, I didn't know
still
what else to
write
do.
handwritten checks.
You still write handwritten checks. Yeah. It's like I didn't know what to do. I didn't have money to pay for QuickBooks. I just wrote
Yeah.
them by hand, you know?
Yeah.
So, kind of bringing this to an end here, and this is kind of a cheesy question, but you've got a young lawyer that emails you, kind of like the way you emailed
Yeah.
your mentor, and says, hey, Alex, I heard your practice. I heard, kind of how you built it.
Yeah.
I want to learn how to do it. Can you give me just a couple pieces of advice? What would you say to that person?
Whew. Oh man, it's a good question. A couple pieces of advice. Young lawyer. Do good work. You got to do good work. Even if you think you're not getting, even if the value's not there, right? You're not getting paid what you think you should be paid. Don't worry about that. I mean, I still do stuff for free.
Yeah.
That's a good piece of advice too. If somebody needs help and you got a ton of time, because you don't have many
Yeah.
cases,
Right.
why don't you just work on the case, even if they can't pay you, or if they can't
Just
pay
work
you
on it.
much?
Yeah.
So yeah, do good work. Spend the time to do the research on things, because you gotta love it. You gotta love researching the law.
Yeah.
LA Law Library is huge.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have great advice. It's kind of all over the place.
No, that is great advice. I mean, any, when you look back on those first 5 years, any kind of, shout outs or
Yeah.
like dedications, thank yous that you want to give out to some of those folks that were there, right? Like obviously LA Law Library had your back.
Yeah.
So props to the LA Law Library. Your mentor, you mentioned
Yep.
his name, but I forget. So props to him. I mean, is there anything else that you can point to, CEB, where you're like, yeah, this was so crucial in me making it, because it was just something that was cheap and easy to use and
Yeah.
learn from, and I couldn't have done it without it.
Keeping your overhead low, and then
Yeah.
Pratik, I spent, like you said, a couple hours a week with you on the phone, just
Well,
talking.
I wasn't giving you advice. That was just us
Yeah.
commiserating.
No,
I
it's
didn't know
just
what I was doing.
talking through
either.
it. So if
Yeah.
you have somebody that you could talk through issues with,
Yeah.
that's important. And yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think finding a good tribe to be like, what do we think about this? Let's analyze this. Let's talk. I think is super important. So,
yeah.
any kind of final thoughts before we wrap up here, Alex?
No, I mean, I think I was telling you, people are going to be in court less because of these Zoom hearings and stuff. But if you can go to court and watch real trials and see real lawyers in court, if you want to be a litigator, if you want to be a transactional lawyer, I have no advice for you. You know, good luck.
Yeah, right, right.
But if you want to be a litigator, seeing people in court, you know, go out of your way to try and do that. Hopefully, it's going to be different in a couple of years, and it's going to be easier to do that. But I think that was invaluable, super, super invaluable to actually see good lawyers, other lawyers, even bad lawyers. You know, see what they mess
Yeah.
up on,
Right.
and just get out there and figure out how to, you know, to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you, Alex, for being here. I really appreciate all the insight and everything. Thank you to everyone for listening and watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Bootstrap Solo. And remember, just because people like Alex make it look effortless and easy now doesn't mean it always was. So thank you, Alex, for sharing your story and telling us about the dirt and the hard work and the grime that you had to get through to where you are today. And that's it for us. Thank you.